The morning Tara found out what her mother-in-law had been saying about her, she was standing in the cereal aisle of the grocery store, holding a box of oatmeal she didn't even need. She had only gone to pick up coffee and cream, but then she heard the voice. That voice, low and conspiratorial, coming from the next aisle over. And she stopped. "Oh, she's sweet enough to your face," Beverly's mother was saying. "But that girl has never once offered to help with anything. Patrick does everything. He cooks, he cleans, he handles the bills. And she just floats around like she's a guest in her own marriage." Tara stood very still. The fluorescent lights buzzed above her. Someone's cart rattled past. She didn't move. "You're serious?" The other woman's voice. Tara didn't recognize it. A neighbor, maybe. Someone from church. Dead serious. "And between you and me?" A pause. Tara could picture the lean-in, the lowered voice, the hand on the arm. "Patrick has been talking about how unhappy he is. I don't think this marriage is going to last another year." Tara set the oatmeal down on the shelf very carefully. Her hands were steady. That surprised her. She had been married to Patrick for 4 years. She worked as a physical therapist, 40 hours a week, sometimes more. She was the one who scheduled their dentist appointments, remembered his mother's birthday, kept the household running the way a household actually needs to run. Invisible labor, the kind nobody applauds. She had never once, not once, heard Patrick say he was unhappy. She picked up her coffee. She picked up her cream. She went to the self-checkout, paid, and walked to her car. She sat in the driver's seat for a long moment with the engine off. Then she thought, okay. Her name was Tara, and she had spent 4 years trying to be exactly what Constance, her mother-in-law, wanted her to be. Warm but not intrusive, present but not too much. She brought food to family dinners. She remembered Constance's preference for decaf and her dislike of cilantro. She sent thank you notes. Actual handwritten notes. Because Patrick mentioned once that his mother appreciated them. None of it had ever been enough. Tara had known that in a vague, background sort of way. The way you know something without letting yourself fully think about it. Constance would compliment the food and then say, "Patrick always did love my pot roast better, though." She would look at Tara's haircut and say, "Interesting choice." She had a gift for the sentence that seemed harmless until you were alone with it later. But this was different. Spreading a story that Patrick was unhappy, that the marriage was failing, that Tara was some kind of deadweight wife who contributed nothing. That was different. Patrick's younger sister was named Vanessa, and she had never tried very hard to hide that she thought her brother had married down. Not because of money or education. Tara had both. But for reasons Tara had never fully understood. Maybe because she was an outsider. Maybe because Constance had always wanted Patrick to end up with someone she'd personally selected. Vanessa followed her mother's lead on most things, which meant every family gathering had a particular texture to it. Pleasant on the surface, subtly undermining underneath. Tara had absorbed it all for years. She had smiled and let things pass and told herself it wasn't worth the conflict. She had convinced herself that the best way to handle Constance was patience. Let her come around on her own. Don't make Patrick feel like he has to choose. She had been patient, and in the meantime, Constance had been telling people, neighbors, church friends, anyone who would listen, that Patrick's marriage was crumbling and his wife was a burden. Tara thought about that the whole drive home. And by the time she pulled into the driveway, she knew exactly what she wasn't going to do. She was not going to say a word about it. Not yet. Patrick was at the kitchen table when she walked in, laptop open, reading something for work. He looked up and smiled at her. That easy smile she had fallen in love with, the one that reached his eyes and made him look exactly like the person he actually was. Kind, uncomplicated, good. "Just coffee?" he asked, looking at the bag. "And cream," she said. He watched her put it away. "Everything okay?" "Long morning," she said. And she smiled and meant it, and that was the truth. It was a long morning. Just not for the reasons he would assume. She needed to know one thing before she did anything else. She needed to know whether what she'd heard in that grocery store aisle was recent, a one-time slip, or whether it had been going on for a long time. So she started paying attention differently. It wasn't hard. She simply listened more carefully when Constance was around. She noticed the way conversations would shift slightly when she walked into a room at family dinners. Not fall silent, but adjust, the way people do when they've been saying something they don't want you to hear. She started paying attention to the wives of Patrick's cousins, women who had always been pleasant, but a little guarded with her. She wondered now what they had been told. Then, about 10 days after the grocery store, she ran into Deborah. Deborah was a woman from Constance's church, the kind of person who had known Patrick since he was in middle school, and who genuinely believed she meant well. She stopped Tara in the parking lot of the dry cleaners, took her hand, and looked at her with an expression of terrible, sincere compassion. "Honey," she said, "I just want you to know, I pray for you and Patrick both. Whatever you're going through, God is bigger than all of it." Tara looked at her. "Thank you, Deborah. We're doing really well, actually." Deborah patted her hand. Of course. The way she said it made clear she didn't believe a word of it. So it wasn't recent. It wasn't a slip. Constance had been building a story, quietly, steadily, brick by brick, inside the community that surrounded them. The story was that Patrick's marriage was failing, that he was unhappy, that Tara was not what she appeared to be. Tara drove home with her dry cleaning on the back seat and her jaw set. She thought about Patrick, about whether he knew. She didn't think he did. Not the extent of it. He would have said something. He was not the kind of man who could hold on to something like that and not say anything. But he also had a particular blind spot where his mother was concerned, the way people do when they've been loved by someone complicated for their entire lives. He saw the best of Constance because he'd been seeing it his whole life. The rest, he explained away. Tara did not want to make this into something that broke Patrick's relationship with his mother. That was not the outcome she was looking for. But she also could not let this continue. She needed to do something that didn't require Patrick to fight anyone, didn't blow up the family, and didn't leave Constance's version of events standing unchallenged. She needed the truth to come out. And she needed it to come out in a room full of people who had heard the lie. The opportunity arrived in the form of Constance's 65th birthday party. Patrick had been planning it for 2 months. A dinner at his Aunt Rochelle's house. Rochelle was Constance's older sister, and she had the big house and the big dining room and the disposition for hosting. The whole family would be there. Cousins, church friends, Patrick's childhood neighbors, people who had known Constance for decades. About 40 people in total. Patrick was excited about it. He had arranged for a custom cake, tracked down a photo album Constance had been looking for since her last move, organized a slideshow. He had put real love into this. Tara had helped him with the details, because she loved him, and because that was who she was regardless of what was happening with his mother. She had also been doing something else for the past 3 weeks. It had started almost by accident. She had mentioned to her colleague Gwen, just in passing, just as something she was turning over in her mind, that she had been dealing with some interesting family dynamics. Gwen was a physical therapist too, calm and perceptive, and she had asked a few quiet questions, and something about having a person outside the situation looking in made Tara see it clearly for the first time. What she was dealing with was not vague family friction. It was reputation damage, deliberate and sustained. What would actually fix it? Gwen asked her. If the people who heard the lie also heard the truth, Tara said. From me. In person. She had never been afraid of speaking. She had always been better at listening, but when she needed to, she could speak clearly and without trembling. She thought about what it would mean to stand up in that room. Not to attack Constance, not to make a scene, not to make Patrick feel blindsided, but simply to be seen. To correct the record. To be a person in front of these people instead of the shadow version of herself that Constance had been projecting for years. She didn't tell Patrick what she was planning, not because she was hiding it from him. She would tell him after. She would tell him everything. But because she knew that if she told him first, he would spend the next 2 weeks anxious and conflicted, and his mother's birthday dinner would feel like a confrontation from the moment they walked in the door. She wanted it to be a beautiful evening first, and then she wanted the truth. She prepared what she was going to say. She wrote it out, revised it, read it aloud to herself in the bathroom with the door closed. She was not going to be cruel. She was not going to be dramatic. She was going to be calm and clear, and let the facts speak without embellishment. She also called Deborah, just for a short conversation. She thanked her again for her kindness in the parking lot, asked how her grandchildren were doing, and mentioned, lightly, conversationally, that she and Patrick were actually doing wonderfully, that they'd just booked a trip to celebrate their anniversary, and that she was so looking forward to the birthday dinner. Tell Constance I'm so excited to help celebrate her, she said. She could hear Deborah computing something on the other end of the line. Good. The evening of the dinner was warm for early fall. Rochelle's house smelled like slow-cooked food and old wood and the kind of floral arrangement someone takes seriously. People were already spilling out into the backyard when Tara and Patrick arrived, voices overlapping, the particular comfortable roar of a family that knows how to be together. Patrick was in a good mood, a real one. He had the photo album tucked under his arm and a bottle of wine in his hand, and he kept touching the small of Tara's back as they worked through the room, and she let herself feel how much she loved him, because she needed that tonight. She needed to remember what she was protecting. Constance arrived 20 minutes after them, her entrance timed the way her entrances always were. She was dressed well, her hair freshly done, and she worked the room with the ease of a woman who has always understood how to be the center of something. When she reached Tara, she held her by both hands and said, "Don't you look lovely?" in the voice she used when she wanted a thing to sound warm without committing to it. "Happy birthday, Constance," Tara said. "I'm so glad we could all be here together." Dinner was long and good. Rochelle had made too much food in the best possible way. Patrick's cousins were funny. An older man named Arthur, who had been Constance's neighbor for 30 years, told a story about helping her move a couch that made the whole table laugh. Tara laughed too. She meant it. She liked these people. She had always liked them. That was part of what made the whole thing painful. She had wanted to belong here, and Constance had been quietly making sure she didn't. After the cake, after the candles, after the song, after Constance held the photo album and grew genuinely quiet for a moment, soft around the edges in a way Tara had rarely seen, Patrick stood up and asked if anyone else wanted to say anything. A few people did. Short things, warm things. A cousin told a funny story. Deborah said something about faith and gratitude, and then Tara stood up. She felt the room notice her. She saw Constance's expression shift, not alarm exactly, but a kind of recalibration. "I want to say something too," Tara said, "if that's okay." The room settled. "I know I'm still kind of the new person in this family," she said, and a few people smiled because 4 years was not new, and she let them smile. "And I know that joining a family that's already this close-knit, that already has this much history and love in it, is not always the easiest thing. You kind of come in from the outside and hope people will let you in." She looked around the room. She was not looking at Constance yet. She was looking at Deborah, at the cousins, at Arthur. "I've heard some things lately," she said. "That made me realize there might be some confusion about what Patrick and I's life actually looks like. About whether we're happy. About whether I pull my weight." She said it simply, without heat. "I think some of those stories may have been passed along with good intentions. But I want to clear them up, because you all matter to Patrick, and Patrick matters to me, and I don't want there to be a false version of our marriage floating around the people we love." The room was very quiet now. "We're good," she said. "We are genuinely, honestly good. I work full-time, I love my job and I'm good at it. I help run our household and I'm proud of that. And I love your family. I love being part of it." She paused. "I just wanted you to know that from me." Directly, she sat down. Patrick's hand found hers under the table. He hadn't known this was coming. She felt the surprise and the slight tension of his grip, but he held on anyway, and that was everything. The silence lasted only a few seconds before Rochelle said, firmly and warmly, "Well, thank you for that, sweetheart." And the room exhaled. Tara did not look at Constance for a long moment. When she finally did, Constance was looking at her plate. Her expression was something Tara had never seen on her before. Not anger, not calculation. Something smaller and more uncomfortable. Something that looked a great deal like being seen. On the drive home, Patrick was quiet for the first 10 minutes. Tara waited. "My mom's been saying things," he said finally. "It wasn't a question." "Yes." Another silence. "How long?" "A while," she said. "I only found out recently." He exhaled through his nose. She watched his hands on the steering wheel. "I'm sorry, Tara. You didn't do it." "I know. But I should have." He stopped, started again. "I've let things go that I shouldn't have. Because it was easier, because she's my mom and I kept telling myself it wasn't that serious." He glanced at her. "I think I've known a little. That she was harder on you than she should be. I just didn't want to look at it." "I know," she said. And she did know. She had always known. She hadn't needed him to fight for her. She just needed him to see it. "What you did tonight," he said. "That took guts." "I was tired of a story being told about me that wasn't true," she said. "I just wanted to tell my own story." He reached across and took her hand. She leaned her head back against the seat and watched the streetlights pass. Constance called Patrick 2 days later. Tara wasn't there for the conversation. She was at work, a long afternoon of patience, and by the time she got home, Patrick was in the kitchen making dinner. He told her about the call while he stirred pasta. She said she was sorry, he said. She said she didn't realize how much she'd been saying, that it got away from her. He kept stirring. "I don't know how much I believe that," but she sounded, "I don't know." Like she actually meant it. "Okay," Tara said. "Are you okay with me having a relationship with her?" He looked up. "I don't know how to do this, without feeling like I'm choosing." "You're not choosing," she said. "She's your mom. I don't want to take that from you. I just needed her to stop." He nodded. "Set down the spoon. She asked if she could call you." Tara thought about that. She thought about the grocery store aisle, the oatmeal she didn't need. Deborah's sorrowful compassion in the dry cleaner's parking lot, the years of small erasures. Maybe, she said, not yet, but maybe. Patrick nodded like he understood. She thought he did. The pasta was good. They ate at the kitchen table with the windows open, because it was still warm enough. And Patrick told her about something funny that had happened at work. And she laughed at the right places because it was actually funny. And outside the trees were doing what trees do in early fall, holding on a little longer, not ready to let go just yet. There was still work to do. She knew that. Constance would have to rebuild something with her, slowly and genuinely, or not at all. Vanessa, who had said nothing to Tara since the dinner, was a whole other conversation. The trust that had been worn down did not repair itself overnight, just because the truth had been spoken in a room. But the story had changed. That was real. The version of Tara that Constance had been circulating, the phantom wife, the burden, the quietly failing marriage, that version had been replaced with something else in the room where it mattered most. With Tara herself standing up and saying, "This is who I am. I'm right here. I've been here all along." That was enough. For now, that was exactly enough.